The first time Clara saw the graffiti, her heart sank. Scrawled across the side of the old Maplewood factory, in bold, angry letters were the words, "Go back where you came from." The paint was still dripping, fresh and raw, like the divide that had been growing in her town for years. Clara stood there, frozen, as the morning sun cast long shadows over the crumbling brick walls. She thought about the families who had moved here for a fresh start, the kids at school who whispered about feeling like outsiders, and the elders who clung to the past like a lifeline. Maplewood was supposed to be a place of unity, a place where everyone belonged. But now, it felt like a town on the edge of breaking apart. She didn't know it yet, but that moment would change everything. Because Clara wasn't the kind of person to stand by and watch her home fall apart. She was the kind of person who would fight for it, no matter how hard it got. The bell rang, signaling the start of another Monday morning at Oakwood High School. Students shuffled into their seats, half asleep, clutching coffee cups and yawning through the early morning fog. But in room 204, something was different. Something was electric. Ms. Harper, the history teacher, stood at the front of the class, her arms crossed and a smirk playing on her lips. She was known for her sharp tongue and even sharper opinions. Today, she had a glint in her eye that made the students exchange nervous glances. Whatever was coming, they knew it wasn't going to be good. "All right, class," Ms. Harper began, her voice dripping with sarcasm. "Today, we're going to talk about beliefs. You know, those little things people cling to when they can't handle reality." A few students chuckled nervously. Others shifted uncomfortably in their seats. But one student, a quiet girl named Amina, sat perfectly still. Her dark eyes were fixed on her notebook, her hands folded neatly on the desk. She was used to being invisible, but today, that was about to change. Ms. Harper's gaze swept across the room and landed on Amina. "Amina," she said, her tone suddenly sweet. Too sweet. "Why don't you start us off? Tell us about your unique religious practices. I'm sure the class would love to hear all about them." Amina's heart skipped a beat. She could feel the eyes of her classmates boring into her. She swallowed hard and opened her mouth to speak, but Ms. Harper cut her off. "Oh, wait," the teacher said, feigning embarrassment. "I forgot. You don't celebrate holidays like the rest of us, do you? No Christmas, no Easter, no... What's that thing you do? Oh, right. Praying 5 times a day. How quaint." The class erupted into laughter. Amina's cheeks burned. She wanted to disappear, to melt into the floor and never come back. But Ms. Harper wasn't done. "I mean, seriously," the teacher continued, pacing the room like a predator circling its prey. "How do you even keep track of all those rules? No pork, no alcohol, no fun. What's left? Oh, right. Judging everyone else for not following your perfect little lifestyle." The laughter grew louder. Amina's hands trembled under the desk. She wanted to defend herself, to explain that her faith wasn't about judgment or rules. It was about love, peace, and connection to something greater. But the words wouldn't come. All she could do was sit there, silent and humiliated. Ms. Harper leaned against her desk, clearly enjoying herself. "You know, Amina, maybe you should teach us all how to be as holy as you are. Or better yet, maybe you should just lighten up. Life's too short to be so serious." The bell rang, saving Amina from further torment. She grabbed her bag and bolted out of the room, tears stinging her eyes. She didn't stop running until she reached the safety of the girls' bathroom. There, she sank to the floor, her back against the cold tile wall, and let the tears flow. But little did Ms. Harper know, Amina wasn't just any student. She was the niece of Imam Yusuf, one of the most respected religious leaders in the country. And tomorrow, he was coming to Oakwood High School. Amina sat on the bathroom floor, her tears drying on her cheeks. She took a deep breath, trying to steady her racing heart. The sound of the bell ringing for the next class echoed through the halls. but she couldn't bring herself to move. Not yet. Her mind replayed Ms. Harper's words over and over, each one cutting deeper than the last. It wasn't the first time someone had mocked her faith, but it was the first time it had happened so publicly, so cruelly. She felt exposed, as if her very soul had been laid bare for everyone to laugh at. But then, a thought crept into her mind, a small, flickering light in the darkness. Her uncle, Imam Yusuf. He was coming to the school tomorrow as part of a community outreach program. He didn't know what had happened today, and Amina wasn't sure if she should tell him. She didn't want to cause trouble, but at the same time, she couldn't shake the feeling that this was her chance to stand up for herself and for her faith. Meanwhile, Ms. Harper was in the teacher's lounge, sipping coffee and basking in the afterglow of her performance. She had always prided herself on being blunt, on saying what everyone else was too afraid to say. And today, she had outdone herself. The look on Amina's face had been priceless. Sure, the girl was quiet and polite, but Ms. Harper had always found her irritating, too perfect, too pious, too different. And in her book, different was dangerous. Another successful class, Harper? Mr. Thompson, the math teacher, asked as he poured himself a cup of coffee. Ms. Harper smirked. You could say that. Just teaching the kids some critical thinking. You know, questioning their beliefs, challenging the status quo, the usual. Mr. Thompson raised an eyebrow, but said nothing. He had heard rumors about Ms. Harper's teaching methods, but he wasn't one to stir the pot. Still, he couldn't help but feel a twinge of unease. There was a fine line between challenging students and humiliating them, and he wasn't sure Ms. Harper knew where that line was. Back in the bathroom, Amina finally stood up. She splashed cold water on her face and looked at her reflection in the mirror. Her eyes were red and puffy, but there was a new determination in them. She wasn't going to let Ms. Harper win. She wasn't going to let anyone make her feel ashamed of who she was. She pulled out her phone and sent a quick text to her uncle. Uncle Yusuf, can we talk after school today? There's something I need to tell you. The response came almost immediately. Of course, Habibti. I'll be there. Later that afternoon, Amina sat in her uncle's car, her hands clasped tightly in her lap. Imam Yusuf glanced at her, his kind eyes filled with concern. What's on your mind, Amina? You seem troubled. Amina took a deep breath and told him everything. The mocking, the laughter, the humiliation. As she spoke, her uncle's expression grew more and more serious. By the time she finished, his jaw was clenched, and his hands gripped the steering wheel tightly. Amina, he said softly, I'm so sorry you had to go through that. No one should ever be made to feel ashamed of their faith. I don't know what to do, Amina admitted, her voice trembling. I don't want to cause trouble, but I can't just let her get away with it. Imam Yusuf nodded thoughtfully. You're right. Silence is not the answer, but neither is anger. Tomorrow, when I come to your school, I will address this. Not with anger, but with wisdom. Sometimes the most powerful weapon we have is the truth. Amina felt a surge of hope. For the first time all day, she didn't feel alone. She had her uncle, her faith, and the truth on her side. And tomorrow, Ms. Harper would learn that actions have consequences. The next morning, Oakwood High School buzzed with anticipation. Word had spread that Imam Yusuf, a prominent religious leader, was visiting to give a special assembly on tolerance and understanding. Students whispered excitedly in the hallways, curious about the man they had only seen on TV or in newspaper articles. But for Amina, the day felt heavy with significance. She knew what was coming, and though she trusted her uncle, she couldn't shake the nervous flutter in her chest. Ms. Harper, on the other hand, was oblivious. She strode into the school with her usual confidence, her heels clicking sharply against the linoleum floor. She had heard about the assembly, of course, but she didn't think much of it. Another feel-good speech, she muttered to herself as she entered the teacher's lounge. Just what we need. More preaching about tolerance. By mid-morning, the entire school had gathered in the auditorium. The room was packed, students and teachers alike filling the rows of seats. On stage, the principal, Mr. Daniels, stood at the podium, his voice booming through the speakers.
Good morning, everyone, he began. Today, we are honored to have a very special guest with us. Imam Yusuf is not only a respected religious leader, but also a passionate advocate for interfaith dialogue and understanding. Please join me in welcoming him to Oakwood High School. The room erupted into applause as Imam Yusuf stepped onto the stage. He was a tall man with a commanding presence, his calm demeanor radiating warmth and authority. He smiled at the audience, his eyes scanning the crowd until they landed on Amina. She gave him a small, nervous smile in return. Thank you, Mr. Daniels, Imam Yusuf began, his voice deep and resonant. And thank you all for having me here today. I'd like to start by sharing a story about a young girl who loves her faith, her family, and her community. But recently, this girl was made to feel ashamed of who she is. She was mocked, humiliated, and made to feel like an outsider in a place where she should have felt safe. The room fell silent. Amina's heart pounded in her chest. She could feel the eyes of her classmates turning toward her, but she kept her gaze fixed on her uncle. This girl, Imam Yusuf continued, is my niece Amina. And what happened to her is not just an isolated incident. It's a symptom of a larger problem. A problem of ignorance, of fear, and of prejudice. Ms. Harper, sitting in the back row, felt a cold knot form in her stomach. She shifted uncomfortably in her seat, her eyes darting around the room. She wanted to leave, to escape the weight of Imam Yusuf's words, but she was trapped. Tolerance, Imam Yusuf said, his voice rising, is not just about accepting differences. It's about celebrating them. It's about recognizing that our diversity is our strength, not our weakness. And it's about understanding that every person, no matter their faith, their background, or their beliefs, deserves to be treated with dignity and respect. The audience erupted into applause, but Imam Yusuf held up a hand, silencing them. But tolerance is not enough. We must go beyond tolerance. We must strive for empathy, for compassion, for love. Because it is only through love that we can truly understand one another. He paused, his gaze sweeping across the room. To the teachers here today, I say this: you have a sacred responsibility. You are not just educators, you are role models. The words you speak, the actions you take, they have the power to shape young minds, to inspire, to uplift. But they also have the power to harm. And when that power is misused, the consequences can be devastating. Ms. Harper's face burned with shame. She wanted to disappear, to sink into the floor and never resurface. But Imam Yusuf wasn't finished. To the students, he said, his tone softening, I say this: do not let anyone make you feel ashamed of who you are. Your faith, your beliefs, your identity, they are yours, and they are beautiful. Hold on to them, cherish them, and never let anyone take them away from you. The room erupted into applause once more, but this time it was louder, more fervent. Students stood up, cheering and clapping. Amina felt tears streaming down her face. But for the first time in days, they were tears of relief, of pride, of hope. As the assembly ended, Imam Yusuf stepped down from the stage and made his way to Amina. He wrapped her in a tight embrace, whispering, I'm so proud of you, Habibti. Meanwhile, Ms. Harper slipped out of the auditorium, her head bowed. She didn't know what to do, what to say. All she knew was that she had been wrong, terribly, painfully wrong. And for the first time in her life, she felt the weight of her actions. The days following Imam Yusuf's assembly were unlike anything Oakwood High School had ever experienced. The speech had struck a chord with students and staff alike, sparking conversations in hallways, classrooms, and even the teacher's lounge. For the first time in a long time, the school felt united. But not everyone was ready to embrace the change. Amina walked through the halls with her head held high, her confidence restored. The whispers and stares that had once made her feel small now felt like badges of honor. Her classmates, inspired by her uncle's words, went out of their way to include her in conversations and activities. Even the kids who had laughed during Ms. Harper's class approached her to apologize. "I didn't realize how much it hurt you," one boy said, his voice trembling with guilt. "I'm really sorry, Amina." She smiled warmly. "It's okay. What matters is that we learn from it and do better." But not everyone was so quick to change. Ms. Harper, once the queen of sarcasm and biting remarks, had become a ghost of her former self. She avoided eye contact with her colleagues, her usual swagger replaced by a quiet, almost timid demeanor. She spent her lunch breaks alone in her classroom, staring out the window, lost in thought. One afternoon, Mr. Thompson knocked on her door. "Hey Harper, you got a minute?" She looked up, startled. Sure. What's up?" He stepped inside, closing the door behind him. "I just wanted to check in. You've been different lately. Everything okay?" Ms. Harper sighed, running a hand through her hair. "I don't know, Thompson. I've been doing a lot of thinking. About the assembly, about Amina. I didn't realize how much damage I was causing. I thought I was just being honest. But now, I don't know." Mr. Thompson nodded, his expression sympathetic. "It's never easy to admit when we're wrong, but the fact that you're reflecting on it, that's a good start." "A start?" she asked, her voice tinged with bitterness. "I humiliated a student in front of the entire class. How do I come back from that?" "By making amends," he said simply. "Talk to Amina. Apologize. Show her and yourself that you're capable of growth." Ms. Harper hesitated, then nodded. "You're right. I'll talk to her." The next day, after class, Ms. Harper approached Amina's desk. The room was empty except for the two of them, the silence heavy with unspoken words. "Amina," Ms. Harper began, her voice uncharacteristically soft. "Can we talk?" Amina looked up, her expression guarded but not unkind. "Of course, Ms. Harper." The teacher took a deep breath, her hands clasped tightly in front of her. "I owe you an apology. What I said to you, it was cruel and it was wrong. I let my own biases cloud my judgment, and I hurt you in the process. For that, I am truly sorry." Amina studied her for a moment, then smiled. "Thank you for apologizing, Ms. Harper. It means a lot." Ms. Harper nodded, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. "I also want you to know that I'm going to do better. I'm going to educate myself, to be more mindful of my words and actions. You've taught me an important lesson, Amina, and I won't forget it." Amina's smile widened. That's all anyone can ask for, to learn and grow. As the weeks passed, the school began to change in subtle but meaningful ways. Ms. Harper, true to her word, made an effort to be more inclusive and respectful in her teaching. She even started a new unit on world religions, encouraging her students to explore and appreciate different cultures and beliefs. Amina, meanwhile, found her voice in ways she never had before. She joined the school's diversity club, where she helped organize events and workshops to promote understanding and acceptance. Her confidence grew, and so did her impact on those around her. One day, as she was leaving school, she ran into Imam Yusuf, who had come to pick her up. "How's my favorite niece?" he asked, his eyes twinkling. She laughed. "I'm your only niece, Uncle Yusuf." "Exactly," he said, grinning. "So how are things?" Amina thought for a moment, then smiled. "They're good. Really good. I feel stronger, I guess. Like I can handle anything." Imam Yusuf nodded, his expression proud. "That's my girl. Remember, Amina, the world can be a difficult place, but it's also full of beauty and possibility. Never let anyone dim your light." "I won't," she promised. "And thank you, Uncle Yusuf, for everything." He wrapped an arm around her shoulders as they walked to the car. "Always, Habibti. Always." The story of Imam Yusuf's assembly and Amina's resilience didn't stay confined to Oakwood High School. It spread like wildfire, first through social media, then local news outlets, and eventually national platforms. A video of Imam Yusuf's speech, recorded by a student on their phone, went viral, amassing millions of views and sparking a wave of conversations about tolerance, empathy, and the role of educators in shaping young minds. Amina found herself at the center of it all. She was invited to speak at community events, sharing her story and encouraging others to stand up against prejudice and bullying. Her message was simple but powerful. We all have the power to make a difference, no matter how small we feel. One such event was a town hall meeting organized by the local Interfaith Council. The room was packed with people of all ages, backgrounds, and beliefs, all eager to hear what Amina had to say. She stood at the podium, her hands steady and her voice clear. "When I was younger," she began, "I used to think that being different was a bad thing. I thought I had to hide who I was to fit in. But now I know that our differences are what make us beautiful. They're what make us strong." The audience erupted into applause, but Amina wasn't finished. Change starts with us, with each and every one of us. It starts with the way we treat each other, the way we talk to each other, the way we listen to each other. And it starts with standing up for what's right, even when it's hard. Her words resonated deeply, inspiring others to share their own stories of struggle and triumph. By the end of the night, the room was filled with a sense of hope and unity that no one had expected. Meanwhile, Ms. Harper's journey of growth continued. She became an advocate for inclusive education, attending workshops and training sessions to better understand the needs of her diverse students. She even reached out to Imam Yusuf, asking for his guidance on how to incorporate lessons about different faiths and cultures into her curriculum. "I want to do better," she told him during one of their meetings. "Not just for Amina, but for all my students. I want to create a classroom where everyone feels valued and respected." Imam Yusuf smiled. "That's a noble goal, Ms. Harper, and I'm here to help in any way I can." Together, they developed a series of lesson plans that explored the history, beliefs, and practices of various religions. Ms. Harper's students responded enthusiastically, eager to learn about the world beyond their own experiences. One day, as she was packing up her things after class, a student approached her. "Ms. Harper." She looked up, surprised. "Yes, Sarah?" The girl hesitated, then said, "I just wanted to say thank you for teaching us about all this stuff. It's really cool to learn about other cultures and religions. It makes me feel like the world is bigger, you know." Ms. Harper smiled, her heart swelling with pride. "I know exactly what you mean, Sarah, and thank you for being so open-minded. It's students like you who give me hope for the future." As the months passed, the ripple effect of Imam Yusuf's message continued to spread. Other schools in the district reached out to Oakwood High, asking for advice on how to promote tolerance and understanding among their students. Community organizations partnered with the school to host workshops and events, creating a network of support and solidarity. Even beyond the local community, the story inspired change. A national education nonprofit launched a campaign called Teach with Love, which encouraged educators to prioritize empathy and inclusivity in their classrooms. The campaign featured Amina and Imam Yusuf as ambassadors, their story serving as a powerful reminder of the impact one person, or one speech, can have. One evening, as Amina and her uncle sat on the porch watching the sunset, she turned to him and said, "Do you think we really made a difference, Uncle Yusuf?" He smiled, his eyes filled with warmth. "I know we did, Habibdi. But the truth is, the difference wasn't just ours to make. It belongs to everyone who listened, everyone who learned, and everyone who decided to do better. Change is a collective effort, and you've played a beautiful part in it." Amina leaned her head on his shoulder, feeling a deep sense of peace. "I'm glad we did it together." "Me too," he said, wrapping an arm around her. "Me too." Months had passed since Imam Yusuf's assembly, and Oakwood High School had become a model for inclusivity and understanding. But just as things seemed to settle into a new normal, an unexpected event shook the community once again. Amina was now a senior, her confidence and leadership skills shining brighter than ever. She had been elected president of the Diversity Club and was working on a major project, a school-wide cultural fair that would celebrate the traditions, foods, and art of the students' diverse backgrounds. The fair was set to be the biggest event in Oakwood's history, and Amina was determined to make it unforgettable. But as the planning intensified, a new student arrived at Oakwood, a transfer named Lucas. He was quiet and reserved, with a mysterious air that intrigued some and unsettled others. Rumors swirled about why he had transferred mid-year, but no one knew the full story. Ms. Harper, now a champion of inclusivity, noticed Lucas sitting alone at lunch and decided to reach out. "Hi, Lucas," she said, sitting across from him. "I'm Ms. Harper. How are you settling in?" He glanced up, his expression guarded. "It's different here." She nodded. "I can imagine. If you ever need anything, someone to talk to, help with classes, just let me know, okay?" Lucas hesitated, then gave a small nod. "Thanks." Meanwhile, Amina noticed Lucas too. She saw the way he kept to himself, the way his eyes darted around the room, as if he were always on edge. Something about him reminded her of herself, of the girl who had once felt invisible and alone. She decided to introduce herself. "Hey," she said, sitting next to him in the library. "I'm Amina. I don't think we've officially met." Lucas looked up, surprised. Hi. I'm Lucas." "I know," she said with a smile. "I heard you're new. How are you liking Oakwood so far?" He shrugged. "It's okay, I guess. People here seem nice." Amina chuckled. "They are. It wasn't always like this, though. This school has come a long way." Lucas raised an eyebrow. "What do you mean?" She hesitated, then decided to share her story. As she spoke, Lucas's expression softened, and for the first time, he seemed to relax. "That's really brave of you," he said when she finished. "I don't think I could have handled that." "You'd be surprised what you can handle," Amina said. "Anyway, I'm organizing this cultural fair, and I'd love for you to be part of it. Do you have any traditions or hobbies you'd like to share?" Lucas looked down, his hands fidgeting. "I don't know. My family's not really traditional." "That's okay," Amina said quickly. "It doesn't have to be about tradition. It's about sharing who you are. Think about it, okay?" He nodded, and Amina left him with a smile, hoping she had made a connection. But Lucas's arrival wasn't the only twist in store. A few days later, Ms. Harper received an email from the school board. They wanted her to lead a district-wide initiative on inclusive education, using Oakwood High as a blueprint. It was an incredible opportunity, but it came with a catch. She would have to leave Oakwood and work at the district office. The news left her torn. She had finally found her footing at Oakwood, rebuilding her reputation and earning the trust of her students. But the chance to make a bigger impact was tempting. She decided to seek advice from an unlikely source, Amina. "Amina," she said after class one day, "can I talk to you for a minute?" "Of course," Amina said, following her to the empty classroom. Ms. Harper took a deep breath. "I've been offered a position at the district office. It's a big opportunity, but it would mean leaving Oakwood. I don't know what to do." Amina smiled. "That's amazing, Ms. Harper. You've done so much here, and now you have the chance to help even more people. I think you should take it." Ms. Harper looked at her, surprised. "You do?" "Yeah," Amina said. "You've changed so much, and I know you'll keep changing lives wherever you go. Oakwood will miss you, but we'll be okay. You've taught us well." Tears welled up in Ms. Harper's eyes. "Thank you, Amina. That means more than you know." As the cultural fair approached, Amina noticed Lucas becoming more involved. He had started helping with the event, sharing his talent for graphic design to create posters and flyers. Slowly but surely, he was opening up, and Amina couldn't help but feel proud. But on the day of the fair, as the gymnasium buzzed with excitement, Lucas pulled Amina aside. "Can I talk to you?" he asked, his voice tense. "Of course," she said, leading him to a quiet corner. "What's up?" He took a deep breath. "There's something I need to tell you. The reason I transferred here, it's because of my dad. He's not a good person. He got into some trouble, and we had to move. I didn't want to come here, but now, I'm glad I did." Amina's heart ached for him. "Lucas, I'm so sorry. But you're safe here, okay? And you're not alone. You have friends now, people who care about you." He nodded, his eyes glistening. "Thanks, Amina, for everything." The cultural fair was a resounding success, a vibrant celebration of diversity and unity. As Amina looked around the gym, seeing her classmates laughing, sharing, and learning from one another, she felt a surge of pride. They had come so far, and there was still so much more to do. But as the night wound down, a familiar face appeared at the door. Imam Yusuf. He had come to surprise Amina, and as he walked in, the room erupted into applause. "Amina," he said, pulling her into a hug, "this is incredible. You've done something truly special here." She smiled, her heart full. "We did it together, Uncle Yusuf. All of us." The success of a cultural fair had left Oakwood High buzzing with positivity, but not everyone was happy. In the weeks that followed, subtle tensions began to surface. Some parents and community members, uncomfortable with the school's emphasis on diversity and inclusion, started voicing their concerns. One evening, Amina was scrolling through social media when she stumbled upon a post from a local community group. The post criticized the cultural fair, calling it divisive and unnecessary. The comment section was filled with heated debates, some supportive but many outright hostile. Amina's heart sank as she read through the comments. She had worked so hard to create something beautiful, and now it was being torn apart by people who didn't even understand it. She showed the post to her uncle, who had stayed in town to help with a few community projects. Imam Yusuf read the post carefully, his expression thoughtful. "This is disappointing, but not surprising," he said. "Change often meets resistance, especially from those who feel threatened by it. But what do we do?" Amina asked, her voice tinged with frustration. "We can't just let them win." "We don't fight fire with fire," he replied. "We respond with patience, understanding, and facts. Let's organize a community meeting. We'll invite everyone, supporters and critics alike, to have an open, respectful dialogue." Amina nodded, feeling a glimmer of hope. "Okay, let's do it." Meanwhile, Lucas was facing his own challenges. His father, who had been in and out of trouble with the law, had recently been released from prison. Lucas had been dreading this day, knowing it would only bring more instability to his life. One afternoon, as he was walking home from school, he saw his father waiting for him outside their apartment. His heart sank. "What are you doing here?" he asked, his voice tight. "Is that any way to greet your old man?" his father replied, his tone light but with an edge that made Lucas nervous. "I thought you were away," Lucas said, avoiding his father's gaze. "I was," his father said, stepping closer. "But I'm back now. And I've got big plans for us, kid. Big plans." Lucas felt a knot of dread tighten in his stomach. He didn't know what his father's plans were, but he knew they couldn't be good. He needed to find a way out, and fast. The community meeting was held in the school auditorium, and it was packed. Supporters of the cultural fair sat on one side of the room, while critics sat on the other, creating an invisible but palpable divide. Imam Yusuf stood at the podium, his calm presence commanding the room. "Thank you all for coming," he began. "Tonight, we're here to listen, to learn, and to find common ground. Let's remember that we all want what's best for our children and our community. The question is how we get there." The meeting started off tense, with critics voicing their concerns about the cultural fair. "We don't need to focus on our differences," one parent said. "We should be teaching our kids to be Americans first." Amina, sitting in the front row, felt her frustration rising. She stood up, her voice steady but firm. Being American isn't about ignoring our differences. It's about celebrating them. That's what makes this country strong. The room erupted into applause, but not everyone was convinced. The debate continued, with emotions running high. But as the night went on, something remarkable happened. People began to listen. Slowly but surely, the tone of the conversation shifted from confrontation to understanding. By the end of the meeting, while not everyone agreed, there was a sense of mutual respect. Imam Yusuf's wisdom and Amina's courage had opened the door for meaningful dialogue, and that was a start. As for Lucas, he found himself turning to Amina for support. One evening, he showed up at her house, his face pale and his hands trembling. "I don't know what to do," he admitted. "My dad, he's back, and he's talking about pulling me out of school. He says we're leaving town." Amina's heart ached for him. You can't let him do that, Lucas. You've worked so hard to build a life here. You have friends, people who care about you. I know, he said, his voice breaking, but I don't know how to stop him. Imam Yusuf, who had been listening quietly, stepped in. Lucas, you're not alone. There are people who can help, social workers, counselors, even the police if it comes to that. You don't have to face this by yourself. Lucas nodded, tears streaming down his face. I'm scared. It's okay to be scared, Amina said, placing a hand on his shoulder. But you're stronger than you think, and we're here for you no matter what. The community meeting had left a lasting impact, but not everyone was ready to embrace the changes it represented. A small but vocal group of parents continued to resist, spreading rumors and misinformation about the cultural fair and its organizers. The tension in the school was palpable, and Amina could feel the weight of it every day. One morning, as she walked into the school, she noticed a group of students huddled around a bulletin board. Their whispers were sharp, their expressions a mix of curiosity and unease. Amina pushed through the crowd to see what had caught their attention. Pinned to the board was a flyer, its bold letters screaming, "Asterisk, stop the division. Say no to forced diversity." Asterisk, the flyer accused the cultural fair of promoting special treatment for certain groups and called for a return to traditional values. At the bottom was a list of names, students and teachers who had supported the fair, including Amina's. Her heart raced as she read the flyer. This wasn't just criticism, it was a direct attack. She tore the flyer down, her hands trembling with anger and fear. "Who did this?" she demanded, turning to the crowd. No one answered. The students avoided her gaze, their silence speaking volumes. Meanwhile, Lucas was facing his own breaking point. His father had become increasingly volatile, his big plans involving shady deals and dangerous people. Lucas knew he had to get out, but he didn't know how. Every time he tried to stand up to his father, he was met with threats and intimidation. One night, after a particularly heated argument, Lucas packed a small bag and left the apartment. He wandered the streets, unsure of where to go or who to turn to. Finally, he found himself outside Amina's house. He hesitated, then knocked on the door. Amina answered, her eyes widening in surprise. "Lucas, what's wrong?" "I can't go back," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "My dad, he's out of control. I don't know what to do." Amina pulled him inside, her mind racing. "You're safe here," she said firmly. "We'll figure this out." She called her uncle, who arrived within minutes. Imam Yusuf listened as Lucas explained the situation, his expression growing more serious with each word. "You've done the right thing by leaving," he said when Lucas finished. "Now, we need to make sure you're protected." Together, they contacted a social worker and arranged for Lucas to stay with a foster family temporarily. It wasn't a perfect solution, but it was a start. Back at school, the tension continued to escalate. The flyers kept appearing, each one more inflammatory than the last. Amina tried to stay focused on her work, but the constant attacks were wearing her down. She felt like she was fighting a battle on all fronts, and she wasn't sure how much longer she could hold on. One afternoon, as she was leaving the diversity club meeting, she found Ms. Harper waiting for her in the hallway. "Amina," the teacher said, her voice gentle but urgent. "We need to talk." They stepped into an empty classroom, and Ms. Harper closed the door behind them. "I've been hearing things," she said, "about the flyers, about the backlash. Are you okay?" Amina sighed, her shoulders slumping. "I don't know. It's just a lot. I thought we were making progress, but now it feels like we're going backward." Ms. Harper nodded, her expression sympathetic. "I know it's hard, but you can't let them win. What we're doing, it's important. It's worth fighting for." "But how?" Amina asked, her voice breaking. "How do I keep fighting when it feels like no one's on my side?" "You're not alone," Ms. Harper said firmly. "You have me, you have your uncle, you have the diversity club, and you have all the students who believe in what you're doing. Don't let the loudest voices drown out the ones that matter." Amina took a deep breath, feeling a flicker of hope. "You're right. I can't give up. Not now." That evening, Amina and Imam Yusuf sat down to strategize. They knew they couldn't ignore the backlash, but they also couldn't let it derail their efforts. "We need to take the high road," Imam Yusuf said. "We'll address the concerns head-on, but with facts and compassion, not anger." Amina nodded. "And we'll show them the positive impact of what we're doing. We'll share stories from the cultural fair, from the students who felt seen and heard for the first time." "Exactly," Imam Yusuf said, smiling. "We'll remind them why this matters." As the days passed, Amina and her allies worked tirelessly to counter the negativity. They organized a series of workshops and panel discussions, inviting community members to share their experiences and perspectives. They also launched a social media campaign, using the hashtag Oakwood United to highlight the school's commitment to inclusivity. Slowly but surely, the tide began to turn. The flyers stopped appearing, and the voices of support grew louder. Even some of the critics began to soften, their resistance giving way to curiosity and, in some cases, acceptance. But the battle was far from over. Amina knew there would always be challenges, always people who resisted change. But she also knew that she wasn't alone, and that made all the difference. The hashtag Oakwood United campaign was gaining momentum. Stories of students, teachers, and community members celebrating diversity and inclusion flooded social media, and the positive response was overwhelming. Amina, Imam Yusuf, and their allies had managed to shift the narrative, but they knew the work was far from over. One afternoon, Amina received an unexpected email. It was from a national education magazine, asking if they could feature Oakwood High's cultural fair and the hashtag Oakwood United movement in an upcoming issue. Amina's heart raced as she read the email. This was their chance to share their story with the world. She immediately called her uncle. "Uncle Yusuf, you won't believe this," she exclaimed, her voice filled with excitement. "A magazine wants to feature us." Imam Yusuf chuckled. "That's wonderful, Habibti. But remember, this isn't just about recognition. It's about spreading the message of unity and understanding." "I know," Amina said, her tone serious. "And that's exactly what we'll do." Meanwhile, Lucas was adjusting to life with his foster family. It wasn't easy. He missed his old life, even with all its chaos. But for the first time in a long time, he felt safe. His foster parents, Mr. and Mrs. Carter, were kind and supportive, encouraging him to focus on school and his future. One evening, as they sat down for dinner, Mrs. Carter said, "Lucas, we've been talking to your social worker. She thinks it would be a good idea for you to start seeing a counselor, someone you can talk to about everything." Lucas hesitated, then nodded. "Okay, I think that might help." Mr. Carter smiled. "We're proud of you, son. You've been through a lot, but you're stronger than you realize." Lucas felt a lump in his throat. He wasn't used to hearing words like that, but they meant more than he could say. Back at school, Ms. Harper was preparing for her new role at the district office. Her departure was bittersweet. She would miss her students and colleagues, but she was excited about the opportunity to make a bigger impact. On her last day at Oakwood, the students surprised her with a farewell assembly. Amina stood at the podium, her voice steady and heartfelt. "Ms. Harper, when I first met you, I didn't think we'd ever be on the same side. But you've shown me and all of us that people can change. You've become a champion for inclusivity, and we're so grateful for everything you've done." The room erupted into applause, and Ms. Harper wiped away tears. "Thank you, Amina. And thank you, everyone. This school has changed me in ways I never expected, and I'll carry what I've learned here with me wherever I go." As the weeks passed, the magazine feature was published, and the response was incredible. Oakwood High became a symbol of hope and progress, inspiring other schools and communities to take similar steps toward inclusivity. Amina and Imam Yusuf were invited to speak at conferences and events, sharing their story and encouraging others to embrace diversity. But amidst all the success, Amina never lost sight of what mattered most: the people. She continued to lead the Diversity Club, organizing events and workshops that brought students together. She also made sure to check in on Lucas, who was slowly but surely finding his footing. One day, as they sat together in the library, Lucas said, "Amina, I don't think I ever thanked you for everything you've done for me." She smiled. "You don't have to thank me. That's what friends are for." "Still," he said, his voice earnest, "you've changed my life, and I want to do the same for someone else. I've been thinking maybe I'll join the diversity club." Amina's eyes lit up. "That would be amazing, Lucas. We'd love to have you." The school year was coming to an end, and with it, a new chapter was beginning. Amina, now a senior, was preparing to graduate. As she walked through the halls one last time, she felt a deep sense of pride and gratitude. Oakwood High had been through so much, but it had emerged stronger and more united than ever. On graduation day, as she stood on stage to receive her diploma, she looked out at the crowd. Her uncle was there, beaming with pride. So were Ms. Harper, Lucas, and all the friends and teachers who had supported her along the way. As she stepped down from the stage, Imam Yusuf pulled her into a hug. "I'm so proud of you, Habibti. You've done something truly extraordinary." Amina smiled, her heart full. "We did it together, Uncle Yusuf. And this is just the beginning." Graduation had come and gone, and the summer sun hung high over Oakwood. For Amina, the season was a mix of excitement and reflection. She had been accepted to a prestigious university on a full scholarship, where she planned to study sociology and continue her work in promoting diversity and inclusion. But before she left, there was one last project she wanted to complete. She had been working with the Diversity Club to create a legacy project, a mural that would adorn the walls of Oakwood High, symbolizing the school's commitment to unity and understanding. The design featured a tree with roots representing different cultures and branches reaching toward the sky, intertwined with words like hope, courage, and belonging. On the day of the mural's unveiling, the entire school gathered in the courtyard. Amina stood before the crowd, her voice steady and proud. "This mural is more than just art. It's a reminder of who we are and what we stand for. It's a promise to future generations that Oakwood High will always be a place where everyone is welcome." As the cloth covering the mural was pulled away, the crowd erupted into applause. The vibrant colors and powerful imagery brought tears to many eyes, including Ms. Harper's, who had come back for the event. "You've outdone yourself, Amina," Ms. Harper said, pulling her into a hug. "I'm so proud of you." "Thank you," Amina replied. "And thank you for everything you've done. You've been a big part of this journey." Meanwhile, Lucas was navigating his own new horizons. With the support of his foster family and counselor, he had started to heal from the trauma of his past. He had also discovered a passion for graphic design, thanks to his work on the cultural fair and mural. Amina had encouraged him to apply for an internship at a local design studio, and to his surprise, he got it. One evening, as they sat on the steps of the school, Lucas said, "I can't believe how much has changed. A year ago, I didn't think I had a future. Now, I feel like I can do anything." Amina smiled. "You can, Lucas. You've come so far, and I know you're going to do amazing things." "I hope so," he said, his voice soft. "And I want to help others, like you helped me. Maybe I can volunteer at the community center or something." "That's a great idea," Amina said. "You have so much to offer, Lucas. Don't ever forget that." Imam Yusuf, too, was embarking on a new chapter. His work at Oakwood High had inspired him to launch a nonprofit organization dedicated to promoting interfaith dialogue and education. The organization, called Bridges of Understanding, quickly gained traction, attracting support from community leaders and organizations across the country. One evening, as he and Amina sat on the porch watching the sunset, he said, "I couldn't have done any of this without you, Habibti. You've been my inspiration." Amina leaned her head on his shoulder. "And you've been my rock. I'm so proud of you, Uncle Yusuf." "We make a good team," he said, smiling. And this is just the beginning. As the summer drew to a close, Amina packed her bags for college. Saying goodbye to Oakwood was bittersweet, but she knew it wasn't really an ending. It was a new beginning. On her last day in town, she visited the mural one final time. She ran her fingers over the painted words, feeling a surge of pride and gratitude. "Thank you," she whispered, as if the mural could hear her, "for everything." Years later, Amina returned to Oakwood High as a guest speaker for the school's annual Diversity Week. The mural still stood proudly in the courtyard, its colors as vibrant as ever. As she walked through the halls, she saw familiar faces, teachers who had inspired her, students who had been part of her journey, and new faces who carried the torch forward. During her speech, she said, "Change doesn't happen overnight. It takes courage, perseverance, and a lot of hard work. But most of all, it takes people who believe in a better future and are willing to fight for it. Oakwood High taught me that, and I'll carry that lesson with me for the rest of my life." As she left the school that day, she felt a deep sense of fulfillment. The journey had been long and challenging, but it had been worth it. And as she looked toward the future, she knew that the best was yet to come. 5 years had passed since Amina graduated from Oakwood High. The mural she had helped create still stood proudly in the courtyard, a symbol of the school's commitment to unity and understanding. But the world had changed, and new challenges had emerged. Enter Layla, a sophomore at Oakwood High and the younger sister of one of Amina's former classmates. Layla had grown up hearing stories about Amina and the cultural fair, and she was determined to carry on the legacy. But she quickly realized that it wasn't going to be easy. One afternoon, as she sat in the diversity club meeting, she noticed a new student sitting alone in the corner. His name was Ethan, and he had just transferred to Oakwood after his family moved to town. Layla could tell he was nervous, so she walked over and introduced herself. "Hey, I'm Layla," she said with a warm smile. "Welcome to Oakwood." Ethan looked up, surprised. Hi, I'm Ethan. Are you interested in joining the diversity club?" Layla asked. "We're always looking for new members." Ethan hesitated. "I don't know. I'm not really into that kind of stuff." Layla tilted her head. "What kind of stuff?" "You know," Ethan said, his voice low. "All the diversity and inclusion stuff. It's just not my thing." Layla studied him for a moment, then sat down. "Can I ask why?" Ethan shrugged. "I guess I just don't see the point. People are always going to be different. Why do we have to make such a big deal about it?" Layla nodded, her expression thoughtful. "I get that. But here's the thing. It's not about making a big deal out of our differences. It's about celebrating them. It's about creating a space where everyone feels like they belong." Ethan didn't respond, but Layla could tell he was listening. She decided to share her own story, how she had struggled with her identity as a biracial student, how she had felt like she didn't fit in anywhere, and how the diversity club had helped her find her voice. By the time she finished, Ethan's expression had softened. "I never thought about it like that," he admitted. Maybe I'll give it a try." Layla smiled. "That's all I ask." Meanwhile, Lucas, now a successful graphic designer, had returned to Oakwood to mentor students interested in art and design. He had never forgotten the impact Amina and the diversity club had on his life, and he wanted to pay it forward. One day, as he was helping students with a project, he noticed a quiet girl named Maya sitting by herself, sketching in a notebook. He walked over and peeked at her drawings. "Those are amazing," he said. "You've got real talent." Maya looked up, startled. "Thanks," she mumbled. "Have you ever thought about pursuing art?" Lucas asked. Maya shrugged. "I don't know. My parents want me to focus on math and science. They don't think art is a real career." Lucas nodded, understanding all too well. "I used to think that too. But art is powerful. It can change the way people see the world. And if it's something you love, it's worth fighting for." Maya looked at him, her eyes wide. Really, Lucas said with a smile. "And if you ever need advice or support, I'm here." As the school year progressed, Layla and Ethan worked together on a new project, a podcast called Voices of Oakwood, where students shared their stories and experiences. The podcast quickly gained popularity, sparking important conversations about identity, belonging, and acceptance. One episode featured Imam Yusuf, who had become a beloved figure in the community. He spoke about the importance of empathy and understanding, and how small acts of kindness can create ripples of change. "Change doesn't happen overnight," he said. "But every conversation, every connection, every act of courage brings us closer to a world where everyone feels seen and valued." By the end of the year, Oakwood High had once again become a beacon of hope and progress. The mural in the courtyard had been joined by a new installation, a mosaic created by students, each tile representing a different culture, tradition, or story. As Layla stood before the mosaic, she felt a surge of pride. She knew the work wasn't over, but she also knew that the legacy of Amina, Imam Yusuf, and so many others would continue to inspire future generations. "We're just getting started," she whispered, her voice filled with determination. Layla and Ethan's friendship had grown stronger since their first conversation in the diversity club. Ethan, though initially hesitant, had started to open up about his own struggles, feeling like an outsider after moving to Oakwood and dealing with pressure from his family to conform to their expectations. Layla, in turn, shared her experiences of growing up biracial and the challenges of finding her place in a world that often tried to put her in a box. One afternoon, as they sat in the school library working on their podcast, Voices of Oakwood, Ethan asked, "Do you ever feel like no matter what you do, it's never enough?" Layla looked up from her notes. "All the time." "Why? What's going on?" Ethan sighed, running a hand through his hair. "My parents keep comparing me to my older brother. He's this perfect straight-A student, and I'm just not. I feel like I'm always letting them down." Layla nodded, her expression sympathetic. "I get that. My parents used to do the same thing, compare me to my sister. But you know what? You're not your brother. You're Ethan. And you have your own strengths, your own story. That's what matters." Ethan smiled faintly. "Thanks, Layla. I needed to hear that." As the podcast gained traction, it began to spark conversations beyond the school walls. One episode, featuring a student who had faced discrimination for her disability, went viral, drawing attention from local media and even catching the eye of a national nonprofit organization. The organization reached out to Layla and Ethan, offering to fund a school-wide initiative to promote inclusivity and accessibility. Layla was thrilled, but also overwhelmed. "This is huge," she said to Ethan during their next meeting. "But how do we even start?" Ethan, who had been quietly brainstorming, pulled out a notebook. "What if we create a mentorship program? Older students can pair up with younger ones to help them navigate school life and feel more connected. And we could organize workshops on topics like empathy, allyship, and cultural awareness." Layla's eyes lit up. "That's a great idea. And we could involve the whole community, parents, teachers, even local businesses. This could be bigger than just our school." Meanwhile, Maya, the quiet artist Lucas had encouraged, was starting to find her voice. She had joined the diversity club at Layla's invitation and was using her art to express her thoughts and feelings. Her latest project was a series of portraits showcasing the diversity of Oakwood's student body, each one accompanied by a short story about the subject's background and experiences. When Layla saw the portraits, she was blown away. "Maya, these are incredible. We have to feature them on the podcast." Maya blushed. "Really? You think people would care?" "Are you kidding?" Layla said. "This is exactly what we're trying to do, show people that everyone has a story worth telling." The mentorship program, which they called Bridges of Belonging, launched with a kickoff event in the school auditorium. Layla and Ethan stood on stage, addressing a room full of students, teachers, and community members. "This program is about more than just helping students succeed," Layla said. "It's about creating a community where everyone feels like they belong, where everyone knows their voice matters." Ethan added, "We all have something to offer, and when we come together, we can create something truly amazing." The event was a success, with dozens of students signing up to be mentors or ments. Even Ethan's older brother, who had come to support him, was impressed. "I didn't realize how much you were doing," he said after the event. "I'm proud of you, Ethan." Ethan smiled, feeling a sense of validation he hadn't felt in a long time. "Thanks, man. That means a lot." But not everyone was on board. A group of students, led by a senior named Jake, began to push back against the program. They saw it as unnecessary and divisive, and they weren't afraid to voice their opinions. One day, as Layla and Ethan were putting up posters for an upcoming workshop, Jake approached them. "What's the point of all this?" he asked, his tone mocking. "Why do we need to keep talking about diversity and inclusion? Can't we just move on?" Layla took a deep breath, reminding herself to stay calm. "The point," she said, "is to make sure everyone feels like they belong. And if that makes you uncomfortable, maybe you should ask yourself why." Jake rolled his eyes and walked away, but Layla knew this wasn't the end of the conversation. She and Ethan would have to find a way to address the resistance if they wanted their program to succeed. The pushback from Jake and his friends grew louder in the weeks that followed. They started a counter-campaign, posting flyers around the school that read, "Unity, not division, stop forced diversity." The flyers accused the mentorship program of favoring certain groups over others and called for a return to traditional values. Layla and Ethan were frustrated but determined. They knew they couldn't ignore the criticism, but they also couldn't let it derail their efforts. They decided to organize a town hall meeting, inviting students, teachers, and parents to discuss the program and address concerns. The meeting was tense, with Jake and his supporters voicing their objections loudly. "Why do we need to focus on our differences?" Jake asked. "Shouldn't we be teaching kids to be Americans first?" Layla stood up, her voice steady but firm. "Being American isn't about ignoring our differences. It's about celebrating them. That's what makes this country strong. And that's what this program is all about, creating a space where everyone feels valued and respected." The room erupted into applause, but not everyone was convinced. The debate continued, with emotions running high. But by the end of the meeting, there was a sense of mutual respect. Layla and Ethan had opened the door for meaningful dialogue, and that was a start. As the school year progressed, the mentorship program began to show results. Students who had once felt isolated were now forming connections and finding their voices. Maya's art project was featured in a local gallery, and Ethan's confidence grew as he took on more leadership roles. But the journey wasn't over. Layla knew there would always be challenges, always people who resisted change. But she also knew that she wasn't alone, and that made all the difference. The mentorship program, Bridges of Belonging, was gaining traction, but the resistance from Jake and his group hadn't gone away. If anything, it had grown more organized. They had started a social media campaign, using hashtags like #OneOakwood and #NoLabels to push back against the diversity initiatives. The online debates were heated, and the tension spilled over into the hallways of the school. One day, as Layla walked to class, she overheard a group of students arguing near her locker. "Why do we have to keep talking about this stuff?" one of them said. "It's just making things worse." Layla hesitated, then stepped in. What's making things worse isn't talking about diversity, it's ignoring it. If we don't address these issues, they'll just keep coming up. The students fell silent, but Layla could tell her words had struck a chord. She knew she couldn't change everyone's mind, but she could plant seeds of understanding. Meanwhile, Ethan was dealing with his own challenges. His parents, though proud of his involvement in the mentorship program, were still pressuring him to focus on more practical career paths. "Art and diversity clubs are fine," his father said one evening. "But you need to think about your future. What are you going to do with all this?" Ethan sighed, frustration bubbling up. "I am thinking about my future. I'm learning how to lead, how to communicate, how to make a difference. Isn't that what matters?" His father didn't respond, but Ethan could tell he wasn't convinced. It was a constant battle, one that left Ethan feeling torn between his passions and his family's expectations. Maya, on the other hand, was thriving. Her art project had not only been featured in a local gallery, but had also caught the attention of a renowned artist who offered to mentor her. For the first time, Maya felt like her talent was being recognized and valued. "I can't believe this is happening," she said to Layla one afternoon. "I never thought I'd get this far." Layla smiled. "You deserve it, Maya. Your art is amazing, and it's making a real impact." Maya's success inspired other students to pursue their passions, even if they didn't fit the traditional mold. The school was slowly becoming a place where creativity and individuality were celebrated, not stifled. But the biggest challenge came when Jake and his group organized a protest against the mentorship program. They claimed it was unfair and divisive, and they demanded that the school administration shut it down. Layla and Ethan knew they had to act fast. They organized a counter-protest, inviting students, teachers, and community members to stand together in support of the program. The day of the protest, the school courtyard was packed, with both sides holding signs and chanting slogans. Layla stood on a makeshift stage, her voice amplified by a megaphone. This program isn't about division, it's about connection. It's about creating a space where everyone feels like they belong. And if that makes you uncomfortable, maybe you should ask yourself why. The crowd erupted into cheers, but Jake wasn't backing down. He stepped forward, his expression defiant. "You're just trying to silence us," he said. "You're so focused on being inclusive that you're excluding anyone who doesn't agree with you." Layla took a deep breath, reminding herself to stay calm. "We're not trying to silence anyone. We're trying to start a conversation. And if you're willing to listen, we're willing to talk." The tension was palpable, but in that moment, something shifted. Jake hesitated, then nodded. "Fine, let's talk." The conversation that followed was raw and emotional, but it was also honest. Students from both sides shared their perspectives, their fears, and their hopes. By the end of the day, there were no easy answers, but there was a sense of mutual respect. Jake even approached Layla afterward. "I still don't agree with everything you're doing," he said, "but I respect you for standing up for what you believe in." Layla smiled. "That's all I ask. And if you ever want to talk more, I'm here." As the school year drew to a close, the mentorship program had not only survived, but thrived. It had become a model for other schools in the district, and Layla and Ethan were invited to speak at a statewide education conference. On the day of the conference, as they stood on stage addressing a room full of educators and students, Ethan said, "Change isn't easy. It takes courage, perseverance, and a lot of hard work. But it's worth it. Because every conversation, every connection, every act of courage brings us closer to a world where everyone feels seen and valued." Layla added, "And it starts with us, with each and every one of us. We have the power to make a difference, no matter how small we feel." The room erupted into applause, and as Layla and Ethan stepped off the stage, they felt a deep sense of fulfillment. They knew the journey wasn't over, but they also knew they were on the right path. The end of the school year brought a mix of emotions for Layla, Ethan, and their friends. They had worked tirelessly to make Oakwood High a more inclusive and welcoming place, and now it was time to pass the torch to the next generation. But before they could move on, there was one last project they wanted to complete, a time capsule to commemorate their journey and inspire future students. The idea came from Maya, who had been reflecting on how far they had come. What if we create something that captures everything we've done? The mural, the podcast, the mentorship program. Something that future students can look back on and feel inspired by. Layla loved the idea. "It's perfect. We can include letters, photos, even some of your artwork, Maya. It'll be like a snapshot of this moment in time." Ethan nodded. "And we can bury it near the mural, so it's always connected to the legacy we've built." The time capsule project brought the group together one last time. They spent weeks gathering items, writing letters, and reflecting on their experiences. On the day of the burial, the entire school gathered in the courtyard to witness the event. Layla stood before the crowd, her voice filled with emotion. This time capsule is more than just a collection of objects. It's a reminder of who we are and what we stand for. It's a promise to future generations that Oakwood High will always be a place where everyone is welcome. As the capsule was lowered into the ground, the crowd erupted into applause. It was a bittersweet moment, but also a hopeful one. The legacy of Layla, Ethan, and their friends would live on, inspiring future students to continue the work they had started. Graduation day arrived, and with it, a sense of closure and new beginnings. As Layla walked across the stage to receive her diploma, she felt a surge of pride and gratitude. She had come so far, and she knew this was just the beginning. After the ceremony, she found Ethan, Maya, and the rest of their friends waiting for her. "We did it," she said, her voice filled with emotion. "We actually did it." Ethan smiled. "Yeah, we did. And we're just getting started. Hashtag, hashtag, hashtag." Layla had been accepted to a prestigious university, where she planned to study sociology and continue her work in promoting diversity and inclusion. She had also been offered an internship with a national nonprofit organization, where she would help develop programs to support marginalized communities. On her first day at the university, she felt a mix of excitement and nervousness. But as she walked through the campus, she noticed a mural that reminded her of the one at Oakwood High. It was a sign, she thought, that she was exactly where she was meant to be. Hashtag, hashtag, hashtag. Ethan had decided to pursue a degree in graphic design, with a focus on using art to promote social change. He had also started a blog, where he shared his experiences and insights on diversity, inclusion, and personal growth. One day, as he was working on a new design, he received an email from a local community center. They wanted to commission him to create a mural for their building, one that would celebrate the diversity of their neighborhood. Ethan felt a surge of pride. This was his chance to make a real impact, to use his art to inspire and unite. He knew it wouldn't be easy, but he also knew he was ready for the challenge. Maya had been accepted to an art school on a full scholarship, where she planned to continue developing her skills and exploring her passion for storytelling through art. She had also started a mentorship program for young artists, helping them find their voice and pursue their dreams. One evening, as she sat in her studio working on a new piece, she thought about how far she had come. She had once felt invisible, like her voice didn't matter. But now, she knew she had the power to make a difference, and she was determined to use it. Years later, Layla, Ethan, and Maya returned to Oakwood High for a special event, the unveiling of the time capsule they had buried as students. The school had changed in many ways, but the spirit of inclusivity and unity they had worked so hard to build was still alive and well. As they stood before the crowd, Layla felt a deep sense of fulfillment. This time capsule is a reminder of who we are and what we stand for, she said. It's a promise to future generations that Oakwood High will always be a place where everyone is welcome. The crowd erupted into applause, and as Layla, Ethan, and Maya stepped off the stage, they felt a deep sense of pride. They had come so far, and they knew the journey wasn't over. But they also knew they were ready for whatever came next. Nestled in the rolling hills of the Midwest was the small town of Maplewood, a place where everyone knew everyone, and where old grudges and prejudices ran deep. Maplewood had once been a thriving community, but in recent years, it had become divided. The closure of the town's largest factory had left many families struggling, and tensions between longtime residents and newcomers had reached a boiling point. At the center of the town's struggles was Clara, a high school senior who had lived in Maplewood her entire life. Clara was the kind of person who noticed things others didn't. The way Mrs. Thompson always avoided Mr. Patel at the grocery store, or how the kids from the new housing development were never invited to birthday parties. She wanted to do something about it, but she didn't know where to start. One day, as she was scrolling through social media, she stumbled upon a video of Amina's speech at Oakwood High. The words resonated with her deeply, and she felt a spark of inspiration. Maybe we don't have to stay divided, she thought. Maybe we can change things here, too. Clara decided to start small. She organized a community potluck, inviting everyone in town, longtime residents, newcomers, and everyone in between. She posted flyers around town and created a Facebook event, hoping to get at least a few people to show up. The day of potluck, Clara arrived at the town square early to set up. She wasn't sure what to expect, but as the sun began to set, people started trickling in. Mrs. Thompson brought her famous apple pie, Mr. Patel brought samosas, and even the kids from the new housing development showed up with a tray of cookies. At first, the atmosphere was awkward. People stuck to their own groups, avoiding eye contact and small talk. But as the evening went on, something remarkable happened. A little girl from the new development asked Mrs. Thompson for a slice of pie, and Mrs. Thompson smiled warmly as she handed her a plate. Mr. Patel struck up a conversation with one of the factory workers, and soon they were laughing over shared stories of their hometowns. Clara watched it all unfold, her heart swelling with hope. It was a small step, but it was a start. The potluck was just the beginning. Inspired by the success of the event, Clara decided to take things a step further. She reached out to her school's principal, Mr. Harris, with an idea, a town-wide initiative called Maplewood Together, focused on fostering unity and understanding. Mr. Harris was hesitant at first. "It's a great idea, Clara," he said, "but you're talking about changing decades of history. It's not going to be easy." "I know," Clara replied, "but if we don't try, nothing will ever change." Mr. Harris nodded, impressed by her determination. "All right, let's see what we can do." With the principal's support, Clara and a group of students began organizing events and workshops. They hosted a storytelling night, where residents shared their personal experiences and perspectives. They started a community garden, bringing people together to plant, tend, and harvest. And they even launched a podcast, Voices of Maplewood, to amplify the stories of those who often went unheard. Not everyone was on board with Clara's efforts. A group of longtime residents, led by a man named Tom, began to push back. They saw the initiative as a threat to their way of life and accused Clara of trying to erase Maplewood's history. One evening, as Clara was putting up posters for an upcoming event, Tom approached her. "What's the point of all this?" he asked, his tone sharp. "Why do we need to keep talking about unity and understanding? Can't we just move on?" Clara took a deep breath, reminding herself to stay calm. "The point," she said, "is to make sure everyone feels like they belong. And if that makes you uncomfortable, maybe you should ask yourself why." Tom didn't respond, but Clara could tell her words had struck a chord. She knew she couldn't change everyone's mind, but she could plant seeds of understanding. The turning point came during a town hall meeting organized by Clara and her team. The room was packed, with residents from all walks of life coming together to discuss the future of Maplewood. Tom was there, his arms crossed and his expression skeptical. But as the meeting went on, something shifted. A newcomer named Lila stood up and shared her story, how she had moved to Maplewood to escape an abusive relationship, and how the kindness of her neighbors had given her hope for a better future. "I didn't know if I'd ever feel like I belonged," Lila said, her voice trembling. "But because of people like Clara, I do. And I want to make sure everyone in this town feels the same way." The room erupted into applause, and even Tom looked moved. He didn't say anything, but Clara could tell he was starting to see things differently. By the end of the year, Maplewood had begun to change. The community garden was thriving, the podcast had gained a loyal following, and the town hall meetings had become a regular event. Clara had even been invited to speak at a regional conference on community building, where she shared Maplewood's story and inspired others to take action. As she stood on stage, addressing a room full of educators, activists, and community leaders, Clara felt a deep sense of fulfillment. "Change isn't easy," she said. "It takes courage, perseverance, and a lot of hard work. But it's worth it. Because every conversation, every connection, every act of courage brings us closer to a world where everyone feels seen and valued." The room erupted into applause, and as Clara stepped off the stage, she felt a surge of hope. She knew the journey wasn't over, but she also knew she was on the right path. The success of the town hall meeting had given Clara and her team a renewed sense of purpose, but they knew the work was far from over. Maplewood was still a town divided, and changing decades of ingrained attitudes wouldn't happen overnight. Clara decided to focus on the next phase of Maplewood Together, creating spaces where people could connect on a deeper level. One of her ideas was to start a community storytelling project. She envisioned a series of events where residents could share their personal stories, struggles, and dreams. "If we can understand each other's stories," she told her team, "we can start to see each other as people, not just stereotypes." The first storytelling night was held in the town's community center. Clara had decorated the space with twinkling lights and cozy seating, hoping to create a warm and welcoming atmosphere. As the event began, she felt a mix of excitement and nervousness. Would people actually open up? Or would the evening fall flat? To her relief, the event was a success. One by one, residents took the stage, sharing stories that ranged from humorous to heartbreaking. Mrs. Thompson, The elderly woman who had once avoided Mr. Patel at the grocery store talked about losing her husband and how the kindness of her neighbors had helped her through her grief. Mr. Patel shared his experience of immigrating to the U.S. and the challenges of building a new life in a small town. Even Tom, the skeptical leader of the opposition, stood up and admitted, "I've been resistant to change because I'm scared of losing what I know. But maybe it's time to try something new." The room was filled with tears, laughter, and most importantly, connection. By the end of the night, Clara felt a deep sense of hope. The roots of change were beginning to take hold. One of the most surprising outcomes of the storytelling night was Tom's gradual shift in attitude. While he wasn't fully on board with Maplewood Together, he had started to see Clara and her team in a new light. A few days after the event, he approached Clara at the town square. "I've been thinking," he said, his tone hesitant. "Maybe there's a way we can work together. I still have my concerns, but I don't want to stand in the way of progress." Clara was stunned, but quickly recovered. "That's great to hear, Tom. What did you have in mind?" Tom suggested organizing a town history project, where longtime residents and newcomers could work together to document Maplewood's past and present. "If we can show people how far we've come," he said, "maybe they'll be more open to where we're going." Clara loved the idea. It was a way to honor the town's history while also embracing its future. She and Tom began working together, and while their partnership wasn't without its challenges, it was a step in the right direction. As Maplewood Together gained momentum, it also faced new challenges. Some residents felt left out or overlooked, while others accused Clara and her team of favoring certain groups. The criticism was hard to hear, but Clara knew it was important to address. She decided to hold a series of listening sessions, where residents could voice their concerns and suggestions. The sessions were often tense, but they also provided valuable insights. Clara realized that true unity wasn't about erasing differences. It was about creating a space where everyone felt heard and valued. One of the most impactful sessions was with a group of teenagers from the new housing development. They shared how they often felt like outsiders, excluded from school activities and social events. Clara listened intently, her heart breaking for them. "What can we do to make things better?" she asked. One of the teens, a girl named Jasmine, spoke up. "We just want to feel like we belong, like we're part of something bigger." Clara took her words to heart. She and her team worked with the school to create a peer mentorship program, pairing newcomers with longtime residents to help them navigate school life and build connections. The program was a hit, and Jasmine quickly became one of its most vocal advocates. By the end of the year, Maplewood had begun to transform. The community garden was thriving, the storytelling nights had become a beloved tradition, and the town history project had brought people together in unexpected ways. Even Tom had become an unlikely ally, using his influence to bridge the gap between old and new residents. Clara stood in the town square one evening, watching as families gathered for a community picnic. The laughter, the conversations, the sense of belonging, it was everything she had dreamed of. She felt a deep sense of pride and gratitude. As she looked around, she noticed Tom approaching her. "You've done something pretty amazing here," he said, his tone sincere. "I didn't think it was possible, but you proved me wrong." Clara smiled. "We did it together, Tom. That's what Maplewood Together is all about." Years later, Clara returned to Maplewood for a special event, the unveiling of a new mural in the town square. The mural, designed by Jasmine and other local artists, depicted the town's journey from division to unity. At the center was a tree, its roots intertwined with the words hope, courage, and belonging. As Clara stood before the crowd, she felt a surge of emotion. "This mural is a reminder of who we are and what we stand for," she said. "It's a promise to future generations that Maplewood will always be a place where everyone is welcome." The crowd erupted into applause, and as Clara stepped off the stage, she felt a deep sense of fulfillment. The seeds of change she had planted had grown into something beautiful, and she knew the journey wasn't over. But she also knew that Maplewood and its people were ready for whatever came next. One of the most important lessons Clara learned during her journey was the power of listening. She realized that true change couldn't happen unless everyone felt heard and valued. This lesson was put to the test when a group of elderly residents expressed concerns about the town's rapid changes. Clara organized a special listening session just for them, giving them a safe space to share their fears and frustrations. "We feel like our voices don't matter anymore," one woman said, "like we're being pushed aside." Clara listened intently, her heart aching for them. "Your voices matter," she said, "and we want to make sure you're part of this journey." After the session, Clara and her team worked to incorporate the elders' perspectives into their initiatives. They started an intergenerational storytelling project, pairing seniors with young people to share their life stories. The project became a bridge between generations, fostering understanding and respect. Moral lesson ***, true change begins with listening. When we take the time to hear each other's stories, we create space for empathy and connection ***. As Maplewood together grew, Clara often felt overwhelmed by the enormity of the task. But she reminded herself that change didn't have to happen all at once. It was the small, consistent actions that added up over time. One of these small actions was the kindness wall she and her team created in the town square. It was a simple chalkboard where residents could write messages of encouragement, gratitude, or hope. At first, the wall seemed insignificant, but over time, it became a symbol of the town's growing unity. Clara loved watching people stop to read the messages, their faces lighting up with smiles. "It's amazing how something so small can make such a big difference," she said to her team. Moral lesson ***, small actions can have a big impact. Every act of kindness, no matter how small, contributes to a larger wave of change ***. Not everything went smoothly with Maplewood together. There were setbacks, disagreements, and moments of doubt. But Clara learned that imperfection was part of the process. What mattered was staying committed to the vision, even when things got tough. One of the biggest challenges came when a planned community event was rained out. Clara and her team had worked tirelessly to organize it, and the cancellation felt like a major blow. But instead of giving up, they turned the situation into an opportunity. They moved the event online, hosting a virtual gathering where residents could share stories, play games, and connect from the comfort of their homes. The event was a hit, and Clara realized that sometimes the best solutions come from unexpected places. "We don't have to be perfect," she told her team. "We just have to keep trying." Moral lesson ***, change is messy, and that's okay. What matters is staying committed to the vision and finding creative solutions when things don't go as planned ***. One of the most surprising outcomes of Maplewood together was the ripple effect it created beyond the town. News of the initiative spread, inspiring other communities to take similar steps. Clara received emails and messages from people across the country, asking for advice on how to start their own unity projects. She even got a call from Amina, the student from Oakwood High, whose story had inspired her in the first place. "What you're doing is amazing," Amina said. "You're proving that change is possible, no matter where you are." Clara felt a surge of pride. She had started Maplewood together to make a difference in her own community, but now it was inspiring others to do the same. Moral lesson ***, change doesn't happen in isolation. Every effort creates ripples that can inspire and empower others to take action ***. As Clara prepared to leave Maplewood for college, she reflected on everything she had accomplished. The town was far from perfect, but it was on the right path. The community garden, the storytelling nights, the kindness wall, they were all reminders of what was possible when people came together. At her farewell party, Clara stood before the crowd, her voice filled with emotion. "This isn't the end," she said. "It's just the beginning. Maplewood together isn't about me, it's about all of us. And as long as we keep working together, there's no limit to what we can achieve." The crowd erupted into applause, and as Clara stepped down from the stage, she felt a deep sense of fulfillment. She had planted the seeds of change, and now it was up to others to nurture them. Moral lesson ***, change is a collective effort. When we work together, we create a legacy of hope that can inspire future generations asterisk. Years later, Clara returned to Maplewood for a special event, the unveiling of a new mural in the town square. The mural, designed by Jasmine and other local artists, depicted the town's journey from division to unity. At the center was a tree, its roots intertwined with the words hope, courage, and belonging. As Clara stood before the crowd, she felt a surge of emotion. "This mural is a reminder of who we are and what we stand for," she said. "It's a promise to future generations that Maplewood will always be a place where everyone is welcome." The crowd erupted into applause, and as Clara stepped off the stage, she felt a deep sense of pride. The seeds of change she had planted had grown into something beautiful, and she knew the journey wasn't over. But she also knew that Maplewood and its people were ready for whatever came next. Moral lesson asterisk change is a journey, not a destination. As long as we stay committed to our values, we can continue to grow and thrive, no matter what challenges we face asterisk. The story of Maplewood Together is a testament to the power of unity, empathy, and perseverance. It reminds us that change begins with small actions, that listening is the foundation of understanding, and that imperfection is part of the process. Most importantly, it shows us that when we come together, we can create a legacy of hope that inspires others and transforms our communities. Final takeaway asterisk, no matter how divided or challenging a situation may seem, there is always hope for change. By listening, acting with kindness, and staying committed to our values, we can create a world where everyone feels seen, valued, and loved asterisk.